Hi, my name is Ka. If you like the artwork that I make in this video, I also have commissions available. I do custom characters, OCs, and more. When you commission me, you're not only helping me, but you're also helping out my son, Anino. If you do choose to commission me, you'll be helping us find a better place to live. The link to my commissions form and guidelines are in the description. Now let's get into the video. If I'm being completely honest, I've never really been super good at picking my colors for my characters, and I hope for how long I've been doing art that it's improved a little bit. But I will say I have in the past leaned towards more warm colored color palettes for my characters in general, and this was posing a really big challenge for me because, as I said in the last video, these characters are made of water, which is basically using the most cool color in the color wheel. I don't usually use a lot of blues or really any like other cool colors like cool tone greens or purples or anything like that. Like, it's not my familiar color palette, so mixing both cool and warm was a bit of a struggle. The only time I can really say that I do that is in my shading with the typical warm light and cool shadow. So this was a bit of a challenge for me, and some way that I get through that challenge, especially when I'm doing the initial explorations, is I will basically color in what I think looks nice regardless of what the values are, which is probably not the right way to do it. I've been seeing a lot of people say like color in the values first of what's dark and what's light and then pick your color, but it's hard for me to find a color that matches that same value in black and white. I'm going to be completely honest, and it is a skill that you need to develop over time. I just haven't done that yet. So what I do to kind of like basically have like a shortcut is I will pick the colors that I think looks okay. And then once I do, I put everything in grayscale just to see if there's anything that like looks bland or like things look too gray or maybe some things are too dark, that type of thing. I'm starting to incorporate that more into my process when I'm picking colors, especially for color palettes I'm not really familiar with. So you will see that later in this video when I do that, and then based off of what I think looks best in grayscale, like what has the most different values that pop out to me, like for the character, I will pick that color palette. And even though, yes, like that part may work, I'm also challenging myself by desaturating the colors I'm using for these characters. Again, I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone, and for the past few years, as I've been making art, most of my stuff is super saturated with bright colors and like bold colors. I'm not used to using muted tones, which again, I could get used to, or I need to start doing that because not everything is sunshine and rainbows and like everything's like unicorn glitter poop or whatever. So yeah, I will say that when I was considering the color for the water that they're gonna be, I mentioned in the previous video that I was considering different bodies of water, but for the coloring, I was also thinking about where their source of water comes from. And if I'm thinking of something a little more muted, I'm immediately thinking about like commercial, like Brita water or like drinking water, not necessarily like the ocean or like, you know, some swamp or something that's completely different, like that has a lot of color. Drinking water is pretty standardly boring, I would say, or just more muted in general is basically what I'm going for. So that's a direction that I went with, and it was really, really hard to not go ahead and just pick like a super saturated color to contrast the dullness of like the color of the water, but I digress. I did try to mute it down a little bit with the clothes that they're wearing, but what was the most difficult part for me for that was making sure that the value of the original character, like exploration that I picked, like the value of that character stays the same with the new ones, even though I am changing the color of, like, say, the outfits. But as I continue on with this rendition, I do try to put a little bit more light color in there. Like when I'm rendering for the light, I am putting a slightly lighter shade. So hopefully that will also translate into it not being super dark or mid-tone. And yeah, honestly, for this character, the most difficult part for me overall, since they're water-based, is making them look like water. And I will admit they look very, I would say, unconventional. I did try to basically put more water like patterns specifically in their hair, but for their face was probably the most challenging thing for me because at some points it looked a little bit like, how should I say, tree like, but like it's blue wood because of how I put patterns on like their face. But I did find a reference off Pinterest of a piece of, not a piece, but like kind of like a little tidbit of water that looked nice enough to use. So I tried doing that, but I'm not too sure. You let me know in the comments of how you feel about that, but it does look different. I also was trying to not make them look avatar like the blue people avatar, because the markings on the face look like it, like the ripples and the waves and whatever, like the movement of the water looks a little bit like that. So that's why I added more like circular elements within their face, just so it takes away from like that striped look that the avatar people have. But yeah, and then honestly for this one, it was difficult to not go with black at all, like within any of these characters, but I substituted the darker colors with, instead of using black, with a darker color of, say, like their water, main body's water. I put their eyes like a super dark navy blue. And same with the mouth, like it's hard to see, and I'm wondering if I should change that so it's more prominent or so you can see that they have a mouth. But that one's in the same color as the eyes. And then even with like for their like fur part of their coats, I didn't use any black, even though it looks really, really close to black for some of them. I use something similar in the color family of their actual coat, just so it's a little bit more cohesive with the outfit that they are wearing. And as I keep going on with this rendition, or as I keep rendering, I'm thinking about like how jagged some of these edges are, like since I'm so used to using line art to kind of just like cover all the jagged colored edges, this definitely taught me and pushed me to think in a different way of how to make it look more polished without it looking super like, I won't say amateur-esque. So the last thing I kind of did for that, and you're probably not going to see it until way later in the video, but I go in with like a really textured, not really textured, but slightly textured paintbrush like, so it's a little less harsh with like the lines, and it's a little more faded and blended, I would say, so that it blends more with the background and the hair, and it looks a little bit less, how should I say, again, jagged. I don't know, like that's what I'm thinking of, because I don't like that jagged look either, if I'm being completely honest. Like yes, in line art it works, but for me, color, like just the color and shape, no, not really. So I was doing that, and I thought it looked a little bit more, or a little better, and adding the texture made it feel a little bit more like loose water, because water isn't necessarily uniform. Thinking about that too. So I think that was the right move for that. But even though I end the recording with what it looks like a finished piece, I am also highly debating whether I should add more texture, like say for the one that's wearing yellow and like her earmuffs and stuff. I'm wondering if I should do that, just because like it's a more furry texture and their coats are more sleek, which would honestly match more of the original character that I made in 2019. So I'm kind of glad I made that decision. Like yes, it is easy, but that also plays a little part in the original design from back then. But yeah, this was honestly really interesting to do, and I'm glad I pushed myself to do something like this, just because, again, I don't do this very often. In fact, I haven't done it literally since like what, 2020 or something like that, because after 2020, I started doing more line art stuff or practicing more with line art. And it actually came to a part where like I was transitioning from doing this type of style to line art because I was coloring in line art so it would fade into the actual colors of, like, say, a character. Like, I know, like, what makes a good artist video, I did that same thing. Like, I colored in the line art, like I created a clipping mask and then I shaded in colors for the line art so it's a little less bold with lines because I wasn't confident in my line art back then. But now it's like my go-to, and honestly I kind of miss clipping line art and making it colorful instead of just having black, but this software doesn't necessarily have it, so maybe I will change softwares in the future for that, or maybe I'll go back to Krita because that was my main. Also, I'm sorry if the audio quality is a bit different. I moved locations again, so I apologize for that. But I wanted to say that honestly, I highly considered dabbling in Blender for this iteration of characters, even though I've never tried Blender. Maybe that will be a video to be on the lookout for. Just because I'm mostly a 2D artist. I've never really dabbled in digital 3D art. While I do have a slight background in sculpture, I'm very familiar with form in real life. I've just never dabbled in Blender and it's always fascinated me. So maybe for this project, if it calls for it, I can probably try to, whatchamacallit, I can try to dabble in it and see if I can make something in Blender, or since I have like the basic concepts of these characters in 2D, I can try to recreate them in Blender and maybe I can add them for y'all to see another time. I don't know, it's just a thought. But yeah, so I try to make these characters as quote-unquote 3D looking as possible. I'm honestly sure that I need to work on my rendering a little bit more, but at the same time, this is not supposed to be a super polished piece. If I'm doing concept work, like, yes, it is nice to have the finished result for that, but for what I'm doing, this is just the basic idea that I have for these characters. If I wanted to tweak anything else, maybe then I would render it to basically a more completed and polished look. But yeah, that's basically it for this video. I know my commentary was a bit short. I don't remember if I was supposed to mention anything else. Again, I'm away from my computer, and before starting this this video, I did look over briefly at my computer for any notes that I put down for that, but I believe I covered everything. If you have any questions regarding what I said or what I have mentioned in general in this video, please feel free to comment anything down that you would like to know and I'll answer as promptly as possible. But yeah, again, this is it for the video and I'll see y'all next time. Take care.